is they're not using their artistic part of their brain. And the artistic part of your brain is so key because everybody's face is different. Somebody's chin might be a different shape that would make the cheeks look better a certain way, or the nose and all that. You have to take all that into account.
Welcome to That's Derm Good. I'm Janelle Ball, and I'm excited to bring you thought-provoking conversations about biologics, specialty medications, treatments, and so much more. I'll be chatting with some amazing guests about access, affordability, and advocacy. You're really going to enjoy this show. Welcome to That's Derm Good. Today, my guest is Dr. Leslie Baumann. She is the board-certified dermatologist and medical director at Body and Beauty Labs in Miami location. Welcome, Dr. Baumann. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, so excited to have you on the show and chat a little bit about all the amazing things that you have been doing and working on. I think it's so exciting just to kind of hear a little background story, to know why you got into dermatology and what excites you about dermatology in the first place.
So I grew up in Lubbock, Texas, and I always loved reading business books about CEOs and especially female CEOs. So the best business books at that time were about Elizabeth Arden and Helena Rubinstein and Estee Lauder, who were CEOs of skincare companies. So I always had a fascination with skincare from the business side of it. And I collected vintage skincare. So I have old Ivory soaps, and I have I have the first mascara ever made, and and the first skin lightening cream, and all this stuff in my collection. So when I went to medical school, I actually thought I was going to be a heart surgeon because I trained at Baylor in Houston, Baylor College of Medicine, and that's where Michael DeBakey was. He was a famous heart surgeon, and I worked with him and loved it. But then my last rotation of medical school, because they have you go through different rotations, was dermatology. And I just fell in love with it. My whole life changed because, here you are at the end of school and all of a sudden you change your mind. So that's how I ended up in dermatology. And this was in 89, is that right? Yeah. No, that was when I got out of college, 1992. And so at that time, we didn't have Botox and fillers and all of that stuff. So I did my residency at University of Miami and thought I was going to be a pediatric dermatologist because I have eczema and I'm very fascinated with moisturizers. I've always been fascinated with skin creams, and besides injectables, skincare is really my expertise. So I thought I'll go into pediatric dermatology and help all those babies with eczema. But then the chairman of the department called me in, Dr. William Eaglestein. And he said, hey, listen, I know that you wanted to do pediatric dermatology, but I was just at this dermatology meeting and it was 7 a.m., only 3 people in the audience. And there was this guy talking about something called Botox. He said, everybody thinks he's crazy to inject a poison into wrinkles, but I think he might be onto something. And I know you're interested in the skincare world, and I want to build a cosmetic dermatology department at the University of Miami, and I would love for you to run it. So I was shocked because I said to him, cosmetic dermatology, we just have chemical peels and leg veins. How can you have that as a specialty? And he said, no, I really think this might be big, and I want our school to be the one to do all the trials. So because I had read all these business books, I said, okay, I'll do it, but I want to be the director of the division of cosmetic dermatology and have my own financial unit and have all, hiring and firing control and all that. And he laughs and he goes, okay, but you realize you're going to be the director of yourself. And he thought it was so funny. So that's how it all started. So we were the only university that had cosmetic dermatology. I was full-time there. And so we did the original Botox trials. That got approved in 2002. And then we did all the other ones, Dysport, Jeuveau,
Wow.
all the toxins. And then we also did all the fillers. So we did Restylane and Juvederm and Sculptra and not every single filler, but almost all the fillers. Almost anything injectable, we did the trials for. So I left the university and here I am.
That is amazing. I mean, that is just, you really just were on the very beginning of all of that. Tell me a little bit more about what excited you about learning about the Botox and all the fillers and all of that.
Well, it was just so fascinating. Your audience may know the story, but the way that they discovered Botox is an ophthalmologist was using it for crossed eyes and noticed that wrinkles got better when she used it. So
Mm.
this was all brand new, and no, we didn't really understand how it worked at the time. And I've always been a science geek, so I really loved the process of learning how it worked. I mean, they were learning how it binds and how it blocks the acetylcholine. And I mean, we knew nothing back then. So just
Mhm.
watching the whole field evolve, again, I think it's the business side and the science that is what intrigues me.
Yeah, I think it is so interesting. And, when you think about Botox, I feel like years ago, not as much now, but before, I feel like there was such a, I guess, stigma about Botox where it was like, oh my gosh, you can't, why are you using that in your face? And, everybody's worried about being frozen and all of this, but there's such an art to it. And it's so fascinating. And I didn't realize that it was actually not even used, cosmetically first. Like it wasn't even created for wrinkles.
Oh
But
no,
you
yeah,
can
it
use
was
it
a
for so
medical.
many things now, though.
Yeah, and so so I started doing training for Allergan. Once it got approved, they sent me all around the world and taught people how to do it. So it was really, really cool because my husband was able to go with me back then. They had this thing where if you bought one plane ticket, you got the second one free. So my husband was able to go with me. And we went all over Asia and taught people how to do a Botox. And it was so interesting because nobody had ever heard of it before. And they were like, we're putting a toxin in people. Are you sure it's safe? And I mean, it wasn't even about being frozen back then. It was about
Hmm.
we're putting in poison in people. Are they going to be okay? People were so scared at first.
Yeah. So, what do you think helped curb some of those fears?
Well, they learned a lot about it. They knew a lot about the mechanism and how it worked, and so just educating people and showing that with very small doses, it's safe, and
Hmm.
it clears the system very quickly. It doesn't hang around in your body. The way it works, there's a protein called the SNAP 25, and SNAP 25 is like a key that opens a lock, and when that lock is opened, your muscle contracts. So what happens is the toxin breaks that SNAP 25 in half, and then your muscle can't contract, and then it takes your body a while, usually about 4 months, to make that protein back. Now, you may notice with your patients, sometimes it'll last longer in one person than another, or the same person, it might last 3 months one time and 6 months the next time. And that's
Hmm.
because it depends on how fast your body makes that protein. So one thing I've noticed that's not proven is that if someone's really healthy and they're exercising and they're eating a lot of protein, they seem to make that SNAP 25 faster, and their toxins don't last as long. So
Hmm.
that's really interesting. But this is why you hear people say, Dysport lasts longer or Botox lasts longer. It really varies on the patient,
Hmm.
and that patient, it can vary each time. And because I did all the trials, I got to see people at day 7, day 30, day 60, day 90, day 120 for all of them. They really work very similarly. So I don't feel like there's that much of a difference in all the different toxins.
Yeah. So, when do they find out that it worked for hyperhidrosis and all the other things that it works for?
Okay, so
I don't even know what all.
we did the hyperhidrosis trials too, actually.
Oh, wow.
And we figured out if you spray this cold spray on the hand before you inject, it hurts less. So that was a big contribution at the time because, it hurts so much
Hmm.
doing the hands. I can't think of the guy's name. So what's interesting about Botox for wrinkles is they didn't patent it. The Carruthers are the ones who thought of it first, and they didn't file a patent. And that's why you have so many different toxins that work for wrinkles. But
Hmm.
when it came out, people started discovering other things. And it's like in the trial, they noticed that migraines got better. So there was a doctor who filed a patent for migraines. That's why you don't see a lot of different brands doing migraines. Same thing with hyperhidrosis. There was a doctor who patented that. And that's why I think only Botox is approved for that because they have
Hmm.
the patent. But that's also why you have Botox for medical uses and Botox cosmetic for cosmetic uses because
Hmm.
it has to do with insurance reimbursement and all that.
But it's the exact same product.
Exact same product, but one's covered by insurance and one's not.
Interesting. That is so interesting. Yeah, I have had it done for migraines before, and it did make a huge difference. But
Right.
yeah, that's wild.
So some of my patients say, shouldn't I just go get my migraines done and that way my insurance will cover my cosmetic Botox?
Hmm.
And The problem is where you inject for migraines isn't always aesthetically the best place to inject for wrinkles. So people end up looking a little frozen or a little crooked. So it depends on really the neurologist and if they're thinking aesthetically or not. Some do, and some just think about the pain. When we noticed that migraines got better in the trials, that changed the whole perception of what causes migraines. And then also the pain world. The substance P is the chemical that makes you feel pain. We learned all about that from Botox. So Botox has opened up a lot of knowledge for us just on the mechanism of how it works.
Wow. That is really cool. I think that is just so fascinating learning a little bit about it, because I like Botox. I think it's a great tool, obviously for cosmetic uses, but even for all the other uses as well, just for, for the hyperhidrosis, for migraines. I think that it's just so fascinating just to see how much just the industry has evolved. So you trained other people on how to use Botox. Like how was that when you were working in Miami?
I loved it, but I train people all over the world. So it's funny in the Chinese Botox videos, there's me with my red curly hair dubbed. It's really very funny. I have a funny story about how Allergan discovered me, but I don't know if it's okay to tell or not.
Yes, let's hear it.
So I'm completely self-taught. They're just, when you're one of the first, you don't have anyone to teach you. So because people were starting to want to learn, this is my little bit off color story, but I think it's funny. So I was invited to speak in Monterrey, Mexico on toxins. And the way they did it is they set us up where I was in the exam room with the patient with a camera videoing me, and the audience was in a different room. And so I couldn't hear the audience responses. And I speak a little bit of Spanish because I live in Miami. But every country has words that mean different things in different countries. And it turns out that in Mexico, the word for little chicken, which I'm not going to say in case anybody out there is Mexican, is a bad word in English that is equivalent to a word that starts with P in English. So I was telling the audience in the camera, don't be a little chicken, this isn't scary. You can do it. So I'm saying this bad word and everybody's laughing in the audience, but I don't see them because they're in another room. And I do it like 20 times and they're just rolling and laughing. And Allergan people saw it and they said, that doctor's funny. We're going to hire her. And that's how I got hired to go around the world and train everyone, is saying an accidental dirty word.
That is amazing.
Isn't that funny?
That is so funny. Oh my gosh. So let's talk about your book that you wrote. I mean, oh my goodness. Okay. So first of all, you wrote a textbook to train people. Was this about Botox, or what's the textbook about?
It's about everything in cosmetic dermatology. Mm-hmm. So there's a chapters on skincare. There's chapters on sclerotherapy and chemical peels, and a little bitty chapter on lasers because they only had a few lasers at the time. We had dermabrasion. We didn't do a microdermabrasion yet or anything like that. Then there was a toxin chapter where we just talked about Botox, and then a chapter on fillers. And there were hyaluronic acid fillers in other countries, so there was a little bit of talk about it, the first one and that, but not much because we didn't have it in the U.S. yet. Yeah. And by the way, when Restylane came out in Canada, we in America, we wanted it so badly, but it wasn't FDA approved yet. And you guys out there who are young, you don't know what it was like. We had to use collagen, bovine collagen from cows. And you could be allergic to it and have horrible reactions. So we had to do a skin test on you, wait 4 weeks, do another skin test on you, wait 2 weeks. And if you didn't react, you could get injected. And still about 1% of people would get these horrible inflammatory reactions. So then we heard in Canada, they had this thing called Restylane and people loved it. So some people, I was at a university and I do a lot of trials with FDA, so I'm not a rule breaker, but some people were sneaking Restylane into America and using it. And, they would be maybe in the trunk of their car or whatever when they were coming across the border, and it would get hot. And when hyaluronic acid gets hot, little fragments break off and they become inflammatory. So we know that short HA is inflammatory and long HA is not. which is a whole nother skincare story if you want to talk about that in a minute of which HA is best. But this is why we know that longer chain HAs is better. But anyway, Restylane, it would break off these little inflammatory things. So when people would first inject Restylane in the US, you would get all the swelling and the lips would really swell. And the Canadians were saying that's not true. That doesn't happen. And it took a while to figure out what it was. And then when it got approved in the US and it started getting shipped properly and all of that, you didn't see those problems anymore.
Wow. That is so cool. Just learning about how the mechanism of action, how it works. And, but so that was, then that became kind of a trend to get these fillers. Was it always for like the lips, or what was the first area that most people were wanting these fillers?
Well, the first area that got approved by the FDA was the nasolabial fold, and that was in, I think it was around 2005 when Restylane and Hyloform are the two that got approved first. Hyloform's not on the market anymore because it didn't last very long. And the companies went for the nasolabial fold because it's so easy to show before and after pictures and prove to the FDA that it works. But then when something comes out, then the company has to market it for that reason. So they convinced women that this is bad. And so even to this day, people come in young, maybe 20, worrying about their nasolabial folds, when if you look at a baby, they have nasolabial folds. So that's one of the things that makes people look really fake, in my opinion, is when they over-inject their nasolabial folds. But it really comes from historically, as the companies had to convince you that those were bad so that you would try a filler.
Right. But now the goal of fillers and injectables have kind of shifted to these invisible results now, right?
I hope so. I live in Miami, so I don't know if that's it here. So I actually sold my practice and I'm on a 1-year sabbatical. So I run into my patients in town. I'm going to start working again pretty soon. But in the meantime, I run into my patients and they had to go see somebody else and they have these cheeks that are off and the lips are too big. And I'm like, oh no, I have to go back to work. I feel so bad for them. I don't know I do know. I do know why that happens. And I think we should talk a little bit about what the issue is with that.
Yeah. Tell me when you see that, are you like, who was that doctor? And I need to go talk to them.
I always want to know who it is. Absolutely. But I think this is what happens. So when we do a clinical trial, you need the control group and the treated group to be as identical as possible. So the company decides that you're going to inject, let's say for the Voluma trials, we injected in this area right here. And we had to do a lot of filler to show a difference in the before and after. So if you look at the Voluma trials, there was an average of 5 cc's per person in the trial. But we've had to pick people who are really emaciated, really skinny, very skeletal looking, so that the before and afters would be different, so it would get FDA approval. So it was the patient selection was very particular. And then we had to inject in a certain pattern. So when something gets approved by the FDA, the company has to train you in the same way that it was done in the trial. And that way of injecting isn't right for everybody. So if they're not a skeletal person and needing 5 cc's, back when Voluma first came out, they trained people to do 5 cc's. And that's just so much. That is so much. And that was because of the trial, and they showed you where to inject. So even to this day, when I'm training a new person, if they've gone to any of these company-sponsored training events, and of course the companies do a great job training, but they have to train you the way it was in the trial. If people go to those events, I notice that they always draw the little dots and inject in the little dots. And the problem with that is they're not using their artistic part of their brain. They're not using the right side. And the artistic part of your brain is so key because everybody's face is different. Somebody's chin might be a different shape that would make the cheeks look better a certain way, or the nose and all that. You have to take all that into account. So in other words, you can't inject everybody the same way. And the companies teach you to do that. And that's one of the reasons people look so bad out there.
Wow. So is there any way that there's additional training that people can go to, or is that something that, as an injector, you have to kind of just learn and not, even though you're not technically trained on it that way?
They have all different kinds of levels of training from terrible to great. But the really,
Mm-hmm.
really great trainers like Arthur Swift from Canada, who's one of the best, or Mauricio de Mayo out of Brazil, their trainings can cost $6,000 to $8,000. So it's difficult to be able to
Mm-hmm.
afford that when you're starting out, especially. And also they're teaching advanced techniques. So when you're a beginner, you need to take a class on anatomy so you know where the arteries are and the nerves and all of that, and learn how to handle a problem. If
Mm-hmm.
you hit an artery, you need to know how to handle any of the bad problems, and then you just need to practice in a controlled setting and only inject a little and go really slowly. So if you're a patient out there, you want to find a doctor that has a lot of experience because they've already made all of the mistakes and they already know, what looks good on this shaped face and what looks good on that shaped face. And the problem with someone young and starting out is they just don't have that experience. Like I because I was at a university, anytime there was a problem, people would come to me. And there's many reasons for that. But one reason is when you work for the state in Florida, you can't get sued for malpractice. So people didn't want to have to deal with it. They would just send it to me at the university. And also, we have cruise ships here. So people get injected on cruise ships and then they get off the cruise ship and they have all kinds of problems because the cruise ship doctors are usually bad because they don't really get good training. So I would see all the cruise ship problems. So anyway, I can fix any problem, but that's after 30 years of experience. If I started in
Mm-hmm.
93, I'm not good at math, but that's a long time,
When you said that you fix any problem, it made me think of why the need for that show that they created called Botched.
Botched. Oh, I love that show, Botched. Yeah.
Because there's so many issues that people come in. But do you think that there's got to be some education on the patient side too, because there's so many expectations that I feel like patients have going in thinking, oh, I want to do this, and then there's got to be a level of knowing that your doctor has expertise in that space, and the patient asking for way more than they actually should, saying, no, I want you to make this bigger, or I want my lip, even though it may not look that great, and they're still doing it.
It depends. If you have a new injector who really doesn't know what they're doing, I think the patient needs to know what they want and they need to
Mm-hmm.
educate themselves and they need to maybe guide it a little more than somebody. But it's better to have a provider that knows what they're doing and has a lot of experience. And in that case, you should defer to the provider. So
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I'm not loving about the specialty, one of the reasons I wrote my cosmetic dermatology textbook is because people would say, that's not real medicine. And I wanted to show there is science behind this. So we went from that, trying to convince people this is real medicine, to now everybody knows all about it. Patients come in and they show me an Instagram video or a TikTok video and they say, I want you to do this. They all want Botox, or I'm sorry, I say Botox generically, by the way, because it's too hard to say all of them. So if I say Botox, I mean any of the toxins, but they want any of the toxins here to get rid of these lines. And sure, in a still picture, you look good. But what people don't notice, if you watch the newscasters on the news, they talk kind of like this because they had Botox in their upper lip. And in a video, it looks really fake. It's exactly like I'm doing it right now. So people will come in and they'll beg me for that. And I'll say, I'm not going to do that. It's not going to look good on you. And they're like, but in this TikTok, it looks great or whatever. I think that's ruining the specialty. It really is ruining the specialty. And for
Yeah.
me, I want to go, listen, I did the trials. I wrote the book. I trained all the doctors, and you're picking an Instagram TikTok video over that experience. Really?
Right. Yeah. It's what's trending and what people are seeing. It just, yeah, it's wild that everybody thinks like, hey, I want to look like this and set those expectations. I mean, that's the same with when I used to work in the hair salon. I'd get pictures of make me look like this, and they're looking at the person, not the hairstyle. I'm like, that hairstyle may not look the greatest on you.
That's a great analogy because it is true. Bangs look better on certain shaped faces.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing. I always look at my patients from the straight on, underneath, from the side, all of that. But a lot of times the cheek area, the shape is a little off. And they did it the way they were instructed to do it, but there's just something about the cheek being off. During my sabbatical, I've been taking a lot of sculpting classes and playing with clay, and I'm trying to figure out how to teach people the artistic side, but I don't know how my brain knows what to do. I look at someone,
Mhm.
I know what they need, but how do I teach someone else that? I'm trying to figure out how to do that, maybe in clay or something.
Yeah, that is really cool. So, I mean, you're constantly working, even though you're on sabbatical. You're still working. You're still planning. I feel like a true CEO mindset. When you're constantly thinking about the next thing and okay, how do I do this? Something that I saw was really interesting: the Baumann skin typing system. Tell me a little bit about that because that's now used by dermatologists worldwide. How did you realize that this traditional skin typing methods weren't enough?
So I have been writing a column since 1998 every month on a cosmetic ingredient for a dermatology newspaper. And right now it's called Dermatology News. They've changed their name over the years. But so one month it might be on aloe and one month it might be on sea buckthorn oil or something like that. So I've been, and as you know from my love of creams and the history of the cosmetic industry, I've always loved skincare. So people just started to come to me for skincare consults from all around the world. And I was at the university and they wouldn't let me hire more people. And it would take maybe 45 minutes to sit down with somebody and really get to know their skin and what their problems were and design a regimen for them. And that isn't practical really in any setting, but especially in a university setting. So I had to figure out how I could get my staff to help me. So the first thing I wanted to do is make sure that I could diagnose the patient faster. So I started thinking, what are the issues that I'm thinking about when I'm talking to patients? And the first is dehydration, how good your skin barrier is, how much sebum you're making, how oily you are, how much inflammation you have. And that could be acne, rosacea, allergies, stinging, burning. The fourth one is pigmentation. Do you have dark spots, uneven skin tone? And the last one is aging. What is your risk for aging?
Mhm.
And you put all those together, those are four things. You put all those together, you get 16 different combinations. So, for example, I'm a dry, sensitive, non pigmented, wrinkle prone skin type. So, I need to fix my barrier, I need anti inflammatories, and I need anti aging. Somebody else would have a different skin type, one of the other 16, they would need different things. Excuse me. So, I did that and I figured out the 16 types. And then I figured out if I want my staff to help me, I need to come up with a proper diagnostic tool. So I did a quiz. I spent years validating it. In 2005, my book, The Skin Type Solution, came out. It was a New York Times bestseller. You knew, obviously, it was, I think, in 8 different countries in the end. And
Wow.
you could tell there was a need for proper skin type diagnosis and good advice because people loved the book. It sold really, really well. They didn't have blogs and all of that back then, but they had forums, kind of like Reddit. So
Mhm.
we had a forum that was like Reddit, and people would come on and ask us all these skin type questions, and we would give all this advice. And that's what happened. And then dermatologists started wanting to use the system in their office. So we started a franchise program because we wanted to make sure they used it properly. And then all these, first of all, it was 100 dermatologists, and they tested all the different brands at the time and different combinations because the whole point is you want to get on the right regimen for your skin type. And I'm a big believer that there isn't one best skincare brand. You want the best products from every brand. So we would put together a regimen, maybe an Elastin and a Skin Medica and an LTMD and a Isden and or different products in a regimen, and the doctors would use them in their practice and report back to us. So over that time period, that whole decade, we had doctors testing the regimens. And then in 2020, when COVID happened and the doctors couldn't be open, they begged us to do an online store. So we started skintypesolutions.com, and we run the online store for hundreds and hundreds of doctors and a huge big telemedicine businesses with 700 doctors. So you won't necessarily know it's us, but you go, maybe it's drsmith.com, you go and you'll see there's the 16 skin types, and that's us running the back end of that. And we're always working on the science.
Wow. That is so exciting. There's so much in there that you've been working on and doing. And do you have a skincare line too?
Um, no, I don't have a skincare line, but we have some exclusives of brands that we're the
Okay.
only ones allowed to sell, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So like Xeraphyte is a brand that a South Korean doctor made for me because I have eczema, and he sent me the body cream and said, I think you're going to like this. He had heard me talking about my skin, and he was right, and I love it. So we have exclusive rights to that in the US. And so you'll see it in a lot of dermatologist offices and online. So
Wow.
it's skintypesolutions.com. I write all the blogs myself. We about to launch AI, but the AI is so cool because we don't allow it access to the internet to get any of the answers. I've
Mhm.
uploaded all my textbooks and all my blogs and all those columns on ingredients and everything. And so it gets its information from stuff I wrote, so I know it's correct. So we're still testing that. And then if any of your watchers or viewers or listeners have questions, I have my own Reddit at Skin Type Solutions because I always love the forum format. And people go
Yeah,
ask me skincare questions on Reddit all the time.
that is so cool. Yeah, definitely. We'll make sure we link that in the show notes for sure.
Have you
So
been on Reddit, by the way? Reddit is the coolest.
you know what? I have a little bit just from like clicking on some links, but I haven't actually gone in to like search for anything, which I need to do.
It's so fun because you find your people. Like right now, I'm really into orchids, and I can go to the Reddit orchid section and talk to other
Mhm.
orchid enthusiasts. But it's different than something like a TikTok or Instagram because you can get much deeper information. Instead of someone
Yeah.
going, "This is a great moisturizer," you get to find out why it's great and have
Yeah.
links to it. And on my website, other people with the same skin type as you will give advice. So on Reddit, on my Reddit, you have to say what your skin type is before you ask a question so that
Oh,
other people know you don't want to listen to somebody's skincare advice if they're not your skin type. So that
yeah.
way, apples are talking to apples and oranges are talking to oranges.
So if somebody goes to the website, can they figure out what their skin type is?
Yes. Uh huh.
Okay.
And if you Google skin type quiz, we're the first one that comes up because we're the ones that doctors use in their offices. And it's in all
Okay.
the textbooks and everything. The funny thing
Yeah.
is, in the medical world, it's very known, but in the influencer world, it hasn't really been discovered yet because we were exclusive to dermatologists for so long.
Hmm.
So I always have people go, "Why haven't I heard of this?" So I'm hoping that some influencers will start talking about it and we can have the
Yeah.
non medical world knowing about it too.
Yeah, opening those doors I think is huge, especially because a lot of these influencers have so much of a influence on people that are, coming into the offices, like you were saying before when they're showing you a video or a TikTok of something that they want because they saw an influencer doing that. I think it's so important, especially if they're giving out advice, information, you want to make sure that they're giving out good information because there's so many trends right now that are just not good.
Right, and if an influencer uses a product and has a bad result, maybe it's because of their skin type. Maybe that product would have been great for someone of a different skin type. And the
Hmm.
other way around, sometimes I'll see somebody who obviously has oily skin and they're saying, "Oh, this cleanser is the best," but if I use that cleanser, it would ruin my skin barrier and cause problems.
Right. So knowing your skin type is going to be key to a lot of things.
Right, and they're 16 and most people don't realize 16. It's a
They're
lot, but
16.
it's
I didn't
16.
know that.
That's why I was saying the 4x4. So you're
Hmm.
either oily or dry, and then sensitive or not sensitive, sensitive or resistant, pigmented, non-pigmented, wrinkled, or what we call tight. So if you're under 30, you don't need anti-aging yet if you have good habits.
Mm.
Oh, but we have all this data because we've been doing this for years, and all the dermatologists shared their data with us. About 70% of people between the ages of 20 and 30 need some anti-aging because of their habits, like outdoor sports, not wearing
Mhm.
sunscreen, things like that.
Okay, so then what about your 40s and hormonal patients? What are
Right.
some of the tips for them?
Well, again, it would
Us, I guess.
depend
I
on
would
their
be
skin
included
type,
in that.
but they're probably, well, tell me about your skin and then we'll figure out your skin type. Are you dry or oily, do you think?
I would say I'm dry, but in the summer I can get a little bit oily in the T zone, but mostly, for the most part, dry.
Okay. 80% of people are wrong when they guess, and that's why we spent so many years validating our quiz. So I'm going to ask you a
Hmm.
few more questions.
Okay.
What kind of cleanser do you like? What's your favorite cleanser?
You know what? Right now I'm using this Korean cleanser. It's a powder.
It's a powder and you put water on it.
It's yeah, you just put it in your hands and then it lathers up.
And then how does your skin feel after you use that? Dry and tight, or it feels good?
Yes, it does feel a little dry and tight.
And then what kind of moisturizer do you put on afterwards?
So I use a toner and then I use it's a moisturizing. It came with the same line.
Is
And I'm
it
gonna
heavy cream or like a light lotion?
no, it's a light lotion.
Okay, so you have oily skin. So you're a perfect example of somebody who's wrong about their skin type because a dry person would never be able to use the lathering stuff. The toner would dry them even more and the moisturizer wouldn't be heavy enough. So that's what the quiz does. It asks you questions like that. So
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean that you're dripping with oil. It means that you
Mm-hmm.
make enough sebum, which is great. You want to be an oily type because the sebum has vitamin E and all these anti-aging things in it. So that's great. And you don't look like you're red or get acne or anything.
Not today.
So you do sometimes.
I
Okay,
do get, yes, but it's more like hormonal
like along the
acne.
chin
Yeah.
area. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
hormonal. And then do you get dark spots when you get a pimple? Like when it heals, does it leave a dark
No,
mark?
it usually just kind of goes away.
Okay, so you're probably an OSNW like me, except you have a little bit of acne. I'm more on the rosacea side. So you just need light moisturizers. I mean, I don't know the products exactly that you're using, but as far as using a lathering one and the light moisturizer, that's great. Do you ever feel like sunscreens are just too heavy on you?
Yes, definitely. It's always been hard for me to find a good sunscreen. Mostly I've been finding like a tinted moisturizer because they're a little bit tend to be on the lighter side and I don't have to put as much makeup or anything on if I use
Yeah,
it.
that's the hardest part of your skin type is dealing with the acne and finding a
Hmm.
sunscreen that doesn't feel sticky on you.
Yeah.
So of these 16 types, each one has a personality and issues that are very common across the board for that skin type. And that's why having the same skin types talk to each other is great. So
Mhm.
if you found another OSNW and you guys talked about your skin, that would be much more useful for you than talking to somebody who has a different skin type.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Because I think when we're talking to our friends and, just having conversations, oh, yeah, I love this product. Let me show you this and you can try this. Because, it happens normally, probably more often than not, and not knowing the skin type, that makes a huge difference. But
Right.
yeah, that even bringing that up though, that's really interesting because all this time I'm like, oh, maybe I'm combination. I don't know because it's so very generic. Nobody really puts that information out there to kind of guide you and to say, okay, what is your skin type?
And there's actually no such thing as combination skin because it has to do with how your barrier is and how much sebum you make. But your skin type can change. So it's possible that in the summer when it's really, really humid, then you feel very, very oily. And then in the winter when it's dry and cold, then you might feel a little drier. But in your situation, if you just changed to a cleanser that was creamier instead of that
Hmm.
foamy one, you would be fine in the winter with everything else can stay the same.
Oh, good to know. Oh my gosh, I'm learning so much here. So, okay, tell me a little bit about your new company, Body and Beauty Lab.
So, Skin Type Solutions, my online store, and my answering Reddit questions all day takes up a lot of my time. So, I sold my medical practice about a year and a half ago, and we had 7 providers, and it was a huge practice, and I loved it. But it was, I'm 58 years old now. It's a lot of work to run it, and I wanted to focus more on Skin Type Solutions. So I sold my practice. I had a 1 year non compete, but then I started seeing my patients run around with the big lips and the crooked cheeks. And I started missing my patients, but I didn't want to have the running anything, the administrative role anymore.
Hmm.
So a friend of mine runs Body Beauty and they've won awards for the best Medi Spa. And they started out in Philadelphia and they're coming to Florida. So I started working at their site up in Palm Beach a couple of times just to see how they ran things. And I love the way they run things. So I'm going to be working for them 1 day a week. And then that lets me focus on all my skincare research and all that the other days, but I still have a day I can see patients, which is nice. I did have to give up my research trials though, because you can't do part time. So I'm so sad.
Yeah.
My research
Oh,
team went to go work for one of my friends, and so I still get to see them and everything. But
yeah.
so now I'm focused mostly on just seeing patients and doing the skincare and gardening because I,
Yeah.
I like to grow all these plants that then turn into products. So there's a lot of overlap between gardening and skincare, actually.
Yeah. Well, I've heard that too before, but that is really cool. Now that you can kind of take a little bit of a breather because you've done so much. You've worked so hard to get to where you are now and being best-selling author, writing all of these textbooks and just teaching the next generation of dermatologists, I think is so amazing. what do you feel like is your biggest accomplishment?
Probably raising two kids. I have two boys. They're 27 and 24. And, they grew up with a mom as a dermatologist, so they learned a lot about skincare. And they've actually been helping me with the marketing of skin type solutions. And it's so cool to see the next generation. I'm not a TikTok person. I'm not really, I don't like making videos and all that stuff by myself. My kids know how to do all of that, and they're getting different people to make the educational videos, and it's great because it's time for the next generation to take over all the marketing stuff because it's just so different than it was. I used to walk around and hand out brochures and my business cards when we started. The world's so different now.
Yeah, it's so exciting. So besides gardening, is there anything else that you like to do on your time just to kind of relax and take a breather?
Well, I'm a little bit of a nerd. I take 2 online literature classes. One's actually a Persian literature class, which is fascinating, and I'm taking a James Joyce Ulysses class. And I love online classes. I'm a perpetual student. I do a lot of dance classes. I'm not good at it, but I love it. Some hip hop and jazz type stuff. That's the exercise. I do Pilates. Fundraising, I'm involved with Girls Inc., teaches girls in middle school and high school, after school classes, all kinds of different things that we teach them, and might learn Mahjong pretty soon. I tried golf, and I couldn't justify being in the sun all that time, so I didn't do golf.
That makes sense.
My husband plays golf all the time, so he's always wanting to get me. But, you just sit there and think, oh, my gosh, I'm aging. Like the Wicked Witch in the Wizard of Oz.
You don't think the hats help, or like the long sleeve? I mean, in Miami, it's probably really, really hot for that. But
well, the sad news is no sunscreen's perfect. Some of those ultraviolet light rays get through.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, since we're at the end, I'm going to just sort of give you a good controversial topic for future podcasts for people, but I am not a fan of red light. I think red light ages you. And everybody thinks it's the greatest thing. They're all getting it. They got it for Christmas and Valentine's Day. They sell it crazy. If I mention it on Reddit, people just jump all over me how I'm wrong. And the reason I feel that way is, back in the 50s, they used to treat acne with x-rays. And then they found out that caused skin cancer and aging. Then I think it was probably 1990s, we started doing blue light for acne. And then we found out blue light ages you. We know heat ages you. We know all these other kinds of light age you. So red light does do some cool things to your mitochondria. But you can do that with other skincare products without having the exposure to light. So the people who've done all the studies are all own patents in red light. So they have a vested interest in showing that red light is good. I haven't found any unbiased people doing trials. So I don't have any proof that it ages you. But I just really strongly think that any type of light is going to age you. So I tell people we just have to wait 20 years and see if I'm right. But I'm not using it on my skin. No way.
Well, we'll be looking for your book that you're probably going to write about that, because I can see that happening.
I'll come back on your show when I'm, 80 years old. Hopefully my skin will look like this, and I'll say, see, I told you about the
it will too. Your skin is going to look amazing because of all the things that you know. 100%. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Baumann. It was such a pleasure having you on the show and hearing all the amazing work that you have done and that you continue to do. I think it's so commendable, and you love what you're doing, and it doesn't seem like a job. You're on a sabbatical, but you're still taking classes. You're still doing a lot of things. So, it's so amazing to see that, and so admirable.
Thank you so much. And if, I'm not consistent with social media, but if I ever find something new or interesting, if you're an injector or a doctor or a MediSpa, I post that on LinkedIn, on my LinkedIn, if you want to keep up with the current ingredients or whatever. And then if have any kind of questions about your patients or about skincare or anything like that, come to Reddit and find me at Skin Type Solutions.
Yes, absolutely. I'll be jumping on there too, for sure.
That'd be great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me and listening to That's Derm Good. You can expect new episodes of That's Derm Good every week. The podcast is available on your favorite app, including where you're listening right now. Subscribe to the podcast so you never miss a new episode. Bye.